You're too easy to replace. Let's be honest, she said during a heated argument. I smiled and agreed. Then I walked away completely. Months later, she tried coming back after realizing she couldn't replace what she lost. You're too easy to replace, let's be honest. She said it so casually, like she was commenting on the weather. Like 3 years meant about as much as a receipt she could crumple and throw away. I didn't yell. I didn't break anything. I just looked at her, really looked at her, and something inside me went completely, terrifyingly quiet. And then I smiled. Not out of anger. Not to hide pain. I smiled because, for the very first time in 3 years, I heard her clearly. She thought that was a weapon. It wasn't. It was a door. And I walked right through it. What happened next, what she did after I left, what she lost, what she spent months chasing, I didn't plan any of it. But I won't pretend I didn't enjoy every second of it either. Here's what you need to understand before I tell you the rest of this. I'm not the kind of person people write breakup songs about. I'm not dramatic. I don't make scenes. I show up. I do the work. I love quietly and deeply, the kind of way that doesn't photograph well on social media, but the kind that fills your whole life when it's real. That's what I had with Serafina. Or at least, that's what I thought I had. 3 years. A whole life built in the margins of 2 busy people trying to make something work. And in 30 seconds, she shredded it down to a sentence. I didn't realize it then, but that moment changed everything. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. We were 27, together for 3 years, living in the same city, same neighborhood actually, which made the ending messier than it had any right to be. That's all the backstory you need. The argument started over something stupid. They always do. It was a Saturday afternoon in late October, and the apartment felt too small, the way apartments always feel too small when 2 people are quietly furious at each other. She'd made plans without telling me. Again, 3rd weekend in a row. Her friend Eulalia, a woman I'd never fully trusted but could never explain why, had apparently decided that every weekend was a group outing weekend, and Serafina had apparently decided that I was informed on a need-to-know basis. I told you about this, she said, not even looking up from the mirror where she was doing her earrings. You told me last night, right before we went to sleep. That's still telling you. That's not giving me a choice. She turned around then, and there was something in her expression, something I'd been seeing more and more over the past few months, that I can only describe as contempt dressed up as patience. You always do this, she said. Do what? Make everything into this big, emotional thing. I actually paused at that one, because I genuinely couldn't think of the last time I'd made anything into a big emotional thing. I cooked. I planned. I remembered the things she mentioned once in passing and showed up with them weeks later. I drove an hour in traffic to be there for her work presentation, even though she told me I didn't have to come. Big emotional things? I was the one person in her life who kept everything steady. But I didn't say any of that. I just said, I'm not making it emotional. I'm just pointing out a pattern. A pattern, she repeated, like the word tasted funny. Yeah. She put down the earring. She crossed her arms. And I should have seen it coming. The way her jaw set, the way she exhaled just a little too slowly, but I didn't. I thought we were about to have a real conversation. I was wrong. You know what your problem is? She said. You think you're irreplaceable. I didn't respond. You think I can't do better. That I'd be lost without you. That I need you to show up with your little dinners, and your little gestures, and your little plans. Each little landed like a flick to the face. Deliberate. Tested. You're too easy to replace, let's be honest. There it was. The room went so quiet I could hear the upstairs neighbor's TV. And I just stood there for a second. Processing. Not the words, but the ease with which she said them. She wasn't exploding. She wasn't in tears, scared of her own cruelty. She said it the way you say the milk is expired. Casual. Certain. Already moving on before the sentence was finished. I looked at her. And then, slowly, I smiled. You're right, I said. She blinked. That wasn't what she expected. People are replaceable. You're right. See, I agree with you completely. She stopped. Her arms uncrossed slightly. A flicker of something, confusion, crossed her face. So we're good, she said, trying to reclaim the high ground. We're done, I said. And then I picked up my keys from the counter, walked to the door, and left. No slammed doors. No dramatic last look. No speech. Just gone. I want to stop here for a second, because I know what you're thinking. He just left? Just like that? Yeah, just like that. And I need you to understand. That wasn't impulsive. That wasn't a reaction. That was the result of something that had been building for a long, long time. Something I'd been ignoring. Something I should have paid attention to months earlier. But here's the thing about people who love quietly. They tend to ignore things quietly too. And I had been ignoring a lot. The first sign was about 8 months before that argument. We were at dinner with a group of her friends, people I liked, mostly, and someone asked how we met. Serafina told the story. It was our story. The coffee shop, the wrong order, the conversation that went 2 hours longer than either of us planned. But she told it like a funny anecdote, like something mildly amusing that happened to someone else. Not like the night she'd called me at 1 a.m. 3 weeks later saying she hadn't stopped thinking about me. Not like the stories she used to tell with this glow in her eyes that made everyone at the table lean in. Just a funny thing that happened once. I didn't say anything. I laughed along with everyone else. But I felt it. The distance in the telling. The second sign was smaller. We were cooking together. One of those Sunday evenings we used to protect like something sacred, and I made a joke. A dumb joke, nothing significant. The kind that used to make her laugh so hard she'd grab my arm. She smiled. Politely. The way you smile at a stranger's kid. I noticed. Then I talked myself out of noticing. The third sign was Marcellus. He was a guy from her gym. New to their group. Tall, loud, the kind of guy who takes up a lot of air in a room without contributing much oxygen. She mentioned him once. Then twice. Then started mentioning things he said. Funny things, apparently. Smart observations. I didn't feel jealous, exactly. I felt something worse. Curious. Why is she lighting up like that? I filed it. Said nothing. And there were the late replies. Not always, but often enough that I noticed the pattern. She used to reply within minutes. Now, sometimes, I'd send something in 2, 3 hours would pass. Then a response with no warmth in it. Just information. Running late. Already ate. Talk later. We used to talk. Now we exchanged updates. I told myself that was just what long relationships looked like. I told myself I was being insecure. I told myself she was tired, stressed, going through something. I told myself everything except the truth. The truth was that she had already started checking out. Long before that Saturday afternoon. Long before the argument. Long before you're too easy to replace. She'd been packing her bags quietly for months. And I'd been standing at the door, smiling, asking if she needed help carrying anything. The night I left, I drove to Torrance's place. Torrance has been my best friend since we were 19, and he's the kind of person who will let you sit in silence on his couch for 40 minutes before asking a single question. He handed me a beer, sat across from me, waited. I told him what happened. The whole thing. He didn't react dramatically. He just nodded slowly, the way he does when he's processing. Then he said, "What do you feel?" I thought about it. "Lighter," I said. He nodded again. "Then you made the right call." We didn't talk about it after that. We watched some terrible action movie, and I fell asleep on his couch. Best night's sleep I'd had in months. Serafina didn't call that night. She didn't text either. I think she expected me to come back. Or to reach out. Or to do what I'd done before, which was smooth things over, absorb the discomfort, keep the peace. I had a long history of being the one who came back. Not out of weakness, but because I believed in us. Because I thought the discomfort was temporary. Because I genuinely loved her. But this time, something had snapped clean. Not in anger. Not dramatically. Just cleanly. The way a bone breaks under pressure that's been building for too long. Clean break. No jagged edges. Just done. She texted the next morning. "Can we talk?" I read it. Put my phone face down. Made coffee. Read it again an hour later. And typed back. "I don't think there's much left to say." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Disappeared. Then, "You're being dramatic." I actually laughed at that. Out loud. Alone in my kitchen. Dramatic. The woman who told me I was too easy to replace like she was reading from a grocery list was calling me dramatic for walking away. I didn't respond. Here's what the next 2 weeks looked like for me. I want to be honest. It wasn't all clarity and freedom. There were nights I reached for my phone out of habit. Nights I thought about something funny, and my first instinct was to text her. Nights I'd pass somewhere we used to go and feel this dull ache in my chest. I miss the version of us that used to exist. The early version. The Sunday cooking, the late night drives, the way she used to talk about her dreams like they were already real. I missed that Serafina. But that Serafina had been gone for a while. And I was finally honest enough to admit it. What I did instead of falling apart was work. I'd been sitting on a freelance project for weeks. A branding overhaul for a small restaurant group that Torrance had connected me to. I threw myself into it. Worked long hours. Got obsessed with the details. And somewhere in that obsession, I found something I'd lost without noticing. Myself. Not the version that bent to keep the peace. Not the version that showed up and smiled and absorbed the cold silences. Just me. I started cooking meals I actually wanted to eat instead of planning around her preferences. I started waking up early and running, something I'd stopped because she liked sleeping in and I didn't want to disturb her. I started calling my brother Elwood more often. We drifted because Serafina found him a lot, which looking back is a sentence I should have paid more attention to. I started rebuilding, quietly, the same way I'd done everything else in my life. About 3 weeks in, something unexpected happened. I ran into Serafina. Not planned, not staged. Just the coffee shop near our neighborhood on a Tuesday morning. She was there with Eulalia. I was there alone. We made eye contact from across the room. She looked good. She always looked good. But there was something different in her expression when she saw me. Something I wasn't expecting. Unease. Not guilt exactly. More like, she'd been practicing a version of this encounter in her head, and I wasn't performing my role correctly. She gave a small wave. I nodded. Got my coffee. Left. I didn't go over. I didn't hover. I didn't give her the scene she was waiting for. And I think that was the moment, for her, when something shifted. Torrance told me later, through a mutual friend who knew Eulalia, that Serafina had said I was acting weird. I found that genuinely fascinating. Weird. Not reaching out was weird. Not chasing was weird. Not performing devastation on cue was weird. But you're too easy to replace was apparently just a Tuesday. Interesting. The project wrapped in early December. The restaurant group loved the work. They referred me to another client, a much bigger one. Life was moving, expanding. I took on a new apartment search. I'd been living in a month-to-month situation since leaving the old place, and I was ready for something that was entirely mine. Found something I loved. Corner unit, big windows, good light. I signed the lease on a Friday afternoon and stood in the empty living room for a long time. Just breathing, just being. No one to check in with. No one to negotiate around. Just this room, and this light, and this very specific feeling that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. It was the first time in years I'd felt that. Then came the first message. Not a text. A voice note. That surprised me. Serafina hated voice notes. Said they were inefficient. Which tells you something about her state of mind. I almost didn't listen to it. I sat with it for 2 days. Then, on a Sunday evening, I played it. Her voice was different. Quieter. Hey, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I've been thinking a lot. About things I said. About how things went. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I know I handled things badly. Pause. I miss you. I listened to it twice. Then I closed the app and went to bed. I want to be very clear here. That message didn't reopen the wound. Not because I was cold. Not because I didn't care. But because I had spent 3 years loving someone who had been quietly convincing me that I wasn't enough. Not in dramatic speeches. In small ways. In eye rolls and half answers, and you're too easy to replace like it was a throwaway line. In the polite smiles. In the stories told without warmth. In the versions of me she edited out of her life until only a useful, convenient version remained. One voice note wasn't going to undo that math. I didn't respond. January came. New year, new project, new city rhythm. I'd started running longer distances, something I genuinely enjoyed, which still surprised me. I'd rekindled a friendship with a guy from college, Bramwell, who I'd lost touch with during the relationship. Serafina had found him too intense. He was gloriously, wonderfully intense. We spent hours talking about everything. Work, philosophy, things that mattered. The kind of conversation I'd missed without knowing I was missing it. My world had gotten bigger. Hers, I would find out later, had gotten smaller. The second message came in late January. This time a text. Longer. More deliberate. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I want to be honest with you. I was cruel. The things I said during that argument, I knew what I was doing. I knew it would hurt. And I said it anyway because I was feeling unappreciated, and instead of telling you that, I tried to make you feel small. That wasn't fair. You were the most consistent, caring person I've ever been with, and I threw it away like it was nothing. I know you have no reason to forgive me. I'm not asking you to. I just needed you to know that I see it now. I read it 3 times. Sat with it for a long time. And then I noticed something. She said she felt unappreciated. She said she tried to make me feel small. She said I was the most consistent, caring person she'd been with. Every sentence was accurate. Every sentence was honest. And I felt exactly nothing romantic about it. Not coldness. Not satisfaction. Just nothing. The place where she used to live in me was quiet. I should tell you what I found out around this time, because it reframed everything. Remember Marcellus? Gym guy, loud, takes up air without adding oxygen. Through the mutual friend chain, Torrance to the mutual friend to Eulalia. I found out that Serafina had spent the first month after our breakup hanging around Marcellus. Not dating him, exactly, but orbiting. The way you orbit someone when you've already convinced yourself you're ready to move on. Except Marcellus, it turned out, wasn't particularly interested in being orbited. He was seeing someone, had been for a while, and when Serafina found that out, something apparently cracked. Because that was about when the voice note started. I'm not saying this to gloat. I'm saying it because it confirms something I'd suspected from the moment she said you're too easy to replace. She wasn't stating a fact. She was testing an exit. She was trying on a world without me before she knew whether she actually wanted to leave. And when she found out that world didn't have what she expected, she came back looking for what she'd left. The third contact was a phone call. I saw her name light up my screen on a Wednesday evening in February. I stared at it. 4 rings. 5. I let it go to voicemail. She left one. Short this time. I know you've been getting my messages. You don't have to respond. I just want to see you once. Coffee, somewhere public, no pressure. I have things I want to say in person. You deserve that at least. Let me know. Now here's the part people always ask about. Did you go? Yeah, I went. Not because I was considering getting back together. I want to be straight about that. I went because I believe in finishing things properly. I went because I'm not someone who runs from hard conversations. And honestly, I went because I was curious. Not about whether I still had feelings. I knew that answer. I was curious about who she was now. Whether she'd actually changed. Whether she understood what she'd lost and why. We met at a place in Midtown on a Saturday morning. February, cold, gray sky. She was already there when I walked in. She looked different. Not bad. Just quieter. The kind of quiet that's not peaceful. The kind that comes from a few months of uncomfortable self-reflection. I sat down. She said, "Thank you for coming." I nodded. Ordered coffee. Waited. She talked for a long time. About the argument. About the things she'd felt and hadn't said. About the patterns she'd seen in herself. The way she'd started taking me for granted. The way she'd projected her frustrations onto my consistency and read it as complacency. She talked about Marcellus. Not much, but enough. She said she'd convinced herself she was bored with us. She said she'd confused safety for stagnation. She said she understood now that what I'd been offering her wasn't suffocation, it was foundation. And she hadn't known the difference until she didn't have it anymore. I listened to all of it. Didn't interrupt. Didn't react much. And when she was done, she looked at me with this expression, open, raw, a little desperate, and said, "Is there anything left?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. Not the impulse answer. The honest one. And here's what I said. I believe everything you just told me. I think you mean it. I think you've genuinely reflected, and I think you're being honest right now in a way you weren't for most of the last year we were together. She nodded, hope just barely visible in her face. But Serafina, you looked me in the eye and told me I was easy to replace. You didn't say it in anger. You didn't say it as an insult that slipped out. You said it like a fact. Like you'd already thought it through. Like it was the realest thing you believed about me. She started to say something. I kept going. And the thing is, you weren't wrong. I am replaceable. Everyone is. That's not the point. The point is that you reached for that when you wanted to hurt me. Out of everything you could have said, that's what you pulled. Because somewhere, that's where you kept me. Silence. I don't hate you, I said. I genuinely don't. But I've spent the last few months remembering who I am outside of how you saw me. And I'm not willing to go back. She looked at me for a long time. Her eyes went bright. Not crying. Just absorbing. Then she said, quietly, I know. 2 words. I know. We finished our coffees. She asked about my work. I asked about hers. For about 20 minutes, it was almost easy. Almost like old friends. And then we stepped outside into the cold, and she pulled her coat tighter and said, You're going to be really happy. Not a question. A statement. Almost like she needed to say it out loud to make herself believe it. I know, I said. And I walked to the subway. No looking back. Not because I was being cold. Not for effect. I just genuinely didn't need to. I want to tell you what happened after that, because I think this is the part that actually matters. People always want the dramatic closure. The final confrontation. The moment where everything clicks into place and the wrong party gets their scene. But real life doesn't work that way. Real closure is quieter. Real closure is standing in your own kitchen on a random Tuesday morning, making coffee the way you like it, listening to whatever music you feel like, and realizing that you're not thinking about it. That the thing that used to take up so much space in your chest has just compressed. Not gone, not forgotten, just small enough to live alongside. Real closure is knowing that you loved well, that you gave real things, that you showed up and built something and tried, and the reason it ended wasn't because you were lacking. It ended because she hadn't yet learned how to value what she had until it was standing at the door, keys in hand, agreeing with her. I think about that moment sometimes. The moment she said it. You're too easy to replace. And I think about how she expected me to argue, to prove her wrong, to chase, to shrink myself down into a shape she could dismiss more comfortably. She expected me to perform the role of the man who needs to be chosen, who needs the validation of the person who's already stopped seeing him. Instead, I smiled. I agreed. And I left. Because she was right. I am replaceable. Everyone is. But what she was wrong about, what she didn't understand until months later, was that replaceable doesn't mean worthless. It means you're going to find out exactly what you had when the replacement doesn't come close. 6 months after that coffee shop meeting, Torrance sent me a message. Just a screenshot. No caption. It was Serafina's Instagram. A new post. Nothing dramatic. Just a quote. One of those minimal text posts people make when they're processing something they don't want to say out loud directly. It said, "The most painful lesson I've learned is that some things can't be replaced. They can only be missed." No caption. No tags. Just that. I looked at it for a second. Then I put my phone down. Went back to the thing I was working on. I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel sad. I felt accurate. Like the world had confirmed what I already knew. Here's what I want to leave you with. Not a lesson. Not a speech. Just a fact. When someone tells you who you are to them, really tells you, in an unguarded moment when they're not trying to be kind, believe them the first time. Not because it's true, but because it tells you everything about how they see you. And how someone sees you determines how they'll treat you. Every time. Serafina saw me as easy to replace. And so she treated me as easy to keep. As something she could handle carelessly. As something she'd deal with eventually. As something she could always come back to. And she was right. She could have come back to me. She could have stayed. She could have chosen differently 100 times before she reached the moment where she said those words. But by the time she understood what she'd had, the man who showed up, who planned, who loved quietly and deeply and without drama, that man had spent 6 months remembering that he didn't need to be chosen by someone who only saw him clearly once he was gone. She didn't contact me again after the coffee shop. I didn't expect her to. Some things in the right way. Not with fireworks, not with screaming, not with grand gestures in the rain. Just with 2 people in the cold on a February morning, saying goodbye to something that used to matter. That was enough. The apartment I moved into has big windows. Good light. On Sunday mornings I run 8 miles along the path by the water, and then I come home and cook exactly what I want, and I put on whatever music I feel like, and I sit in that good light, and I breathe. And I think about the man I was in that argument. Standing there absorbing "you're too easy to replace" like I was supposed to argue my own value. And I think about the man I am now. The one who smiled. The one who agreed. The one who walked out. And those are not the same man. Not even close. The last thing I'll tell you is this. A few weeks ago I was at a dinner party. Bramwell hosts them every few months. Loud and chaotic and full of interesting people. And someone asked me what the best decision I'd ever made was. And I didn't think about the business choices, or the apartment, or any of the external things. I thought about a Saturday afternoon in October. A woman crossing her arms. A sentence that was meant to wound. And the smile that changed everything. Knowing when to agree. I said. Nobody at the table understood what I meant. That was fine. It wasn't for them. She said I was easy to replace. She found out she was wrong. Not because I went back to prove it, but because I didn't.